Hey, this is Reese, aka Figador. This is my tutorial video on the infinite piston. Since you can already download the blueprints from the Steam workshop, this is going to be more focused on my design process. So it'll include how I think about things and all my mistakes along the way. If you just want a demo of it working, check out my other video. I'm going to start with a landing gear this time because I want to try and see if I can make this into a ship. Put a light armor block here. I already know this thing uses a lot of timer blocks. I'm going to use those to give this thing some structure. And I'm using timer blocks so that it can be used on servers that don't allow scripting. Weld these up. This design relies on two pistons. This one I'm calling the stabilizer piston. Is the one that locks it in place once the extender piston pushes everything downwards. I'm placing this and the merge block. Right now I'm just trying to get the feel for the overall layout. I'm going to do a quick sketch of the structure, putting enough timer blocks so that the stabilizer piston can extend a bit and retract out of the way when it needs to. It also needs to be high enough that the extender piston pushes the merge blocks into the right position on its way down. So rather than count it out, I'm actually just going to weld this up, power it, and see how far it extends compared to the stabilizer piston. Put the battery here for now. Alright, it's powered, so I'm going to test the extension and see how far it goes compared to the stabilizer piston. And looks like about 2 blocks too far, so I'm going to have to move everything up a bit. This is looking about right. So there will be one merge block here. That will give it space so the second merge block is aligned with the stabilizer piston. I'm gonna rename some of these components so I can keep track of them. We've got the stabilizer piston and the infinite piston. Not sure which merge block was which, but if I turn this one off, then yeah, red. That's the stabilizer merge block. And there's the piston or infinite piston merge block. So I'm going to set aside 5 timer blocks for the extend process, 6 for the retract, and several for the piston velocity adjustments. When I created the extension blueprints, I set the grid pivot alignment so that the projector plus is on top and the line goes in the front. The projectors go on this merge block so that when the welders turn on, they create blocks that are attached to the same grid as this one. I have one projector for the extension blueprint and one for the retraction merge blocks, and I'm going to rename these as well and add the light armor extension blueprint. You can put anything you want here as long as it has the 3 merge blocks, one going backwards, one going forwards, and one facing up for the stabilizer piston. It's important to check this box so the projection stays around once the blocks are welded. I'm not sure if I'm still doing something wrong with the grid pivots, but I still need to do some manual offset adjustments. This alignment's looking good. Hopefully you can start to see how this is supposed to work, with the stabilizer piston going down to connect to that merge block. Next I want to do the welders, so I'm going to do a bit of framing to figure out the placement. I'm going to start adding welder blocks, making sure that their ports line up so that they can share materials. Test it out by adding some materials and turning them on. and nothing's happening. So I probably have to move it out a block. Commencing testing of new position. That appears to work. So I'll move all the welders out a block. And I'll name this group of welders. These are the extend welders. And I'll hide them from the terminal because I only really want to deal with them as a group. Now I'm going to add a couple of grinders. These are the ones that are going to grind down the merge blocks so that we can reuse them. And I'll deal with these as a group as well. Now we need some storage to feed components into the welders. So I'll just add a small cargo container here. So we need steel plates for the light armor blocks, and then merge blocks take large steel tubes, and construction components, and computers, and motors. And some more steel plates for the light armor. You'll have to keep a close eye on the steel plate level as it extends so that it doesn't run out. And a conveyor between these so that it can reuse the materials when it breaks down the merge blocks. I'm just now realizing the welders are in the wrong spot. For the extending, they need to be welding when the piston is retracted. Okay, that's fixed. And now it's time to start programming. Even though there's no scripting or coding involved, this still counts as programming. So we want the first block to do all of the initialization of the various blocks and systems. We need the projector on, the group of extend welders on, do the grinders on as well. The second block is going to be responsible for extending the piston. Oh, and we'll need to chain these together by having the first block trigger the second. We want the start option so it starts the countdown. No reason to have the first block delayed, at least not yet. And the second block will give it enough time to weld. We'll see if 6 seconds is enough. And let's start it. First 2 steps look good. We also need to make sure that the extend merge block is on. I know it's on right now, but once we get to the retract steps, there's a chance this will be off when we start up. And the third step will be to have the stabilizer piston extend and lock onto the merge block. Okay, that was not the cleanest of merges. I could be wrong, but I think it will cause less problems down the road if the grids are aligned as closely as possible before the merge. It looks like the extender piston is pushing it a little bit too far, so I'm going to adjust the maximum distance that it can extend. Looks like 9.9 gets us pretty close. Let's watch how the merge goes. Not as terrible. I'm going to do a bit more organization. I'm going to add phase descriptions to the timer blocks. The first one is the init phase, the second is the extend of the piston, the third is stabilization or stabilize. So I'll add that action now. Just need to turn on the stabilizer merge block. And I'll reset the system by retracting the piston. And it's all still glued together, so turning this off will let it retract. And turn the merge block back on so that the welders activate. Using the little control panels is getting annoying, so I'm wondering if using a control station will let me see what's going on as I change things. Yeah, this is better. So I'll add a couple basic controls to the hotbar. I'll get it to reverse the piston direction, to toggle the merge block on and off, and same with the stabilizer piston and merge block. Extend. The next step is currently programmed to stabilize, but since it's already stabilized from the first step, I think I'm going to have to change this to unstabilize. I'll test this out first. Turn off the stabilize merge block, let it keep extending. The grinders are tearing down the merge blocks for reuse. If that's as far as it goes, I'll have to remember to move the grinders up one block later. So the fourth phase, I'll call the stabilize phase. Stabilize on. Rename phase 5 to retract. And add its actions. Turn off the merge block and retract the piston. Testing manually, merge block off and retract. I'm realizing that I want it to be welding right now, which would mean the merge block has to be on. I think that means I'll have to add another timer block for the sixth phase. Luckily, this one hasn't been used yet, so I'm going to repurpose this one to be the extend timer block 6, and this is the weld phase. Adjusting some of the timing between phases. I think the weld should happen right after the retract. Retract right after stabilize. Stabilize, I'll leave it 10 for now to give it plenty of time. And the first two look fine. I'm going to run through this manually one more time to check my logic. The merge block on starts the weld. Extend. Unstabilize. Actually, I'm going to need a drill before I go any further. Resuming, extend. That was a successful full cycle. One thing it's missing right now is speed. I want mine to be versatile enough to dig tunnels for rovers, and the secret to a smooth tunnel appears to be slow drilling. If you don't need to dig tunnels, you can skip all this mucking about with velocity adjustments and just drill full speed the whole time. Since I want it to drill slowly but do everything else quickly, and the drilling starts at the unstabilized phase, if I add decreasing velocity to that stage, it will slow it down. And if I add the same decrease steps to the retract phase, since it's already negative, it will increase the speed again. I'm going to set all these velocity timer blocks to decrease the speed of the piston, because as far as I can tell, you can only increase the speed by half meter per second increments. And group them together and hide them from the terminal. I'm going to trigger the group of velocity adjustments from the unstabilized phase and the retract phase. It doesn't matter how much time is on these timer blocks because I'm just going to set them all to trigger now. And do the same thing for this phase. Now it's time to chain all of these together, making sure that each phase starts the next and that the final phase starts the first so that it goes in an infinite loop. And I'll group all the extend timers together so I can pause them and resume them as a unit, adding the toggle action for this group to the hotbar for this control station. And begin. Pause here so I can adjust the velocity manually. It doesn't currently match what the system expects it to at this phase. Since it's going to be decreasing the velocity by 5 steps to get it down to drilling speed, I need to increase it by that amount manually now. I'll add the increase velocity action to my hotbar just so I can double check my logic about the 0.5 meter per second adjustment, and press that 5 times. And resume. Okay, it's completely stopped moving. I'm guessing I missed a step, so I'm going to pause and double check all of my chaining actions. Missed a link here. Messed up a couple others. Resuming. That's not right. That timer must be too short. Increasing the stabilized timer and trying again. Looks like I ran out of components when I lost some of my merge blocks. I'll just weld this manually and it should go back into the pipeline.
Fuel.
I'm increasing the overall speed of the piston by 1 so that I can make the stabilized timer a little bit shorter. And that was too short. I didn't pause it in time. So increase that just a bit. And increase the speed by 1 more meter per second. Cleaned up and starting over. It's pretty much just speed tuning from here, so that about does it for the extend portion of the tutorial. Getting it to retract is mostly more of the same, at least as far as the design process goes. If you want to see how the retract portion works, check out my other video, which is a lot shorter, just a quick overview of all the functional components of this design. I want to make these tutorials useful to you guys, so leave me a comment. Tell me what you liked or give me some advice. Thanks for watching.